Well, it's Women's History Month, and this month, our series of Women in Politics and Policy series, today we're going to look at women serving in the Virginia delegation. It's Stay the Water. I'm your host, Eric Claville. We'll be right back in just a moment. Welcome back. It's Stay the Water. I'm your host, Eric Claville. We hope you enjoyed your Black History Month in February, and it seems like it's warming up just a little bit. So start enjoying the spring. I think I hear the birds chirping, and I think all the snow is gone. So hopefully you're staying well and still make sure that you're taking care of your business and your business not taking care of you. As always, we are going to bring you the up-to-date information in policy and politics and culture to ensure that you're well-informed and to make sure that you can make a well-informed decision. But this month is one of my favorite months because we're taking a look at women that have made a difference in our community, in politics and in policy. And we have quite a few that have done that here in the Commonwealth of Virginia. But we know that it hasn't, it's something that just didn't happen overnight. We had trailblazers, people that it was just one of them doing the job. But because of the support that they had in their community and their desire and zeal and just this, I call it God-given purpose, they trailblaze for others to come behind them. So we're going to take a look today at trailblazers of women that really made a mark in politics and policy and that paved the way for those today. But before we do so, I want to take this moment, as I always do, and thank you, the listeners, for listening and supporting us as you've done since 2020. So we've been here almost 5 years. Of course, this summer will be 5 years. So we thank you for almost half a decade of coming on the air and bringing you movers, shakers, and policymakers to discuss issues important to you. We also like to thank you, the Spartan Nation, as we broadcast for almost 5 years now, half a decade, from the campus of the Norfolk State University, home of the Spartan Nation, from none other than WNSB Hot 91, the soul of VA. So with that, I think because we're here at Norfolk State, the biggest and the best HBCU in the Commonwealth and really across the country, but because we're here at this historic institution, I thought it serves us well to start with someone who blazed the trail here in the Commonwealth of Virginia, but who also happens to be an NSU alum. Now, for this show, we're looking at the Virginia delegation, but we're also going to take an overview of what we call the landscape, the landscape of all women in the legislature serving. Now, I want to do that first, and then we'll come back and break it down and take a look at Virginia. But according to the Center for American Women in Politics, this is a think tank at Rutgers University, Rutgers New Brunswick campus. And here they took a look at women who identify themselves as Black or African American and took a look at the numbers, basically the numbers of where they have served and where women have made an impact. Now, just as a historical reference, we understand that women, just like African Americans and Native Americans, could not vote. We were systematically eliminated out of the Constitution from being able to vote and have a voice in the politics of our nation. And not just our nation, but also in our cities, in our states, across the board. And it wasn't until really the suffrage of the 19th Amendment where women could and have the opportunity to vote. So when we take a look at that movement, we take a look at the suffrage movement, the women's suffrage movement, and the ability of women to vote, it's been a long trail. So we're talking the 1920s, right? But with that, since that time period, 105 years basically, we have women who have made a tremendous impact and is not stopping. And with that, we find where Black women as well represent, according to the center, a total of 7.8% of the U.S. population, total population, and 15.4% of the population of women in general. And when you take a look at this and you break it down, let's take a look on the federal level and state level of women holding office. So since women have had the right to vote, right, and since the 1964 Civil Rights Act, when you look at the federal level, no woman has ever held the office of president. No woman at all. We came very close. And that includes black women as well. But it came very close, but no black woman has ever held that office. But in a first, we had one woman, and it happened to be a black woman, Kamala Harris, the only woman that held the office of vice president. And that was in 2021 to 2025. That's over 100 years after the women's suffrage movement, 1920 to 2021. 100 years. Well, she won the election in 2020, so you can say it took a century since having the right to vote for women to be able to ascend to that level of office. Now, that shows you that change itself is slow. It's always right to do the right thing. I just want to make sure we understand that. It's always right to do the right thing. But even when you do the right thing, there are others that may not understand, what you're doing or may not want what you're doing. And it just takes time. It takes time. And it shouldn't take time. But when you're dealing with a society, when you're dealing with those that fought against you, it takes time in order for us to lift and stand, because you have so much on you, years and years of suffering, years and years of policy and politics that pushes you down, years and years of baggage, years and years of oppression, years and years of suppression. And in this case, since having the right to vote, it took over right at 101 years for a woman to ascend to the office of vice president. Now, we've had the opportunity. Geraldo ran with Walter Mondale as vice president in the 80s and lost. Also when Hillary Clinton had the opportunity as a woman to hold that office, but lost as president. And then again, we had the opportunity again as this last presidential cycle, but Harris lost. And then, ironically, they lost to the same person who's currently our president now. So when you take a look at that, change is slow only because there are those that don't want the change that makes it slow. However, you got to keep pushing. You got to keep moving. And when you do that, change does come. And a lot of times it comes like a floodgate. So with that, let's take a look at Congress. Now, currently in Congress, we have 29 women serving in Congress, black women, that is. 5.4% of all voting members of Congress identify as being a black woman. 19.2% of all women voting members of Congress identify as black. That is huge. Think about that. 435 seats, plus you have delegates. So we'll talk about delegates. These are individuals who we have territories of the United States. Puerto Rico is one of them. The U.S. Virgin Islands is another. The District of Columbia is also one. But these are delegates. They're not officially members. They are members of Congress, but they're delegates. But they don't really vote in a lot of substantive voting. And it's a rules thing. But I just want to make sure that we understand that. But of that, 19.2% of all women voting members of Congress identify as black. In the U.S. Senate, we only have 2, right? And in the House is 27. So that includes all members of Congress. That's the breakdown of that 29. And we have 2 members who are U.S. delegates. And again, once again, non-voting members. And usually they are from black nations or nations of color. So with that, that's how many we have. Now, historic congresswomen, we have 0.5% of all members of Congress to date have identified as black women. But 13.8% of all women who have ever served in Congress have identified as black. In the history of our country, we have a total of 61 members of Congress that's ever served in the entire history of our Congress. Now, keep in mind, we've had the United States, of course. We look at 1607, look at 1619. House of Burgesses, 1607, 1619, arrival of first slaves. We have 1776, when our nation, of course, with the Constitutional Convention, 1789, 1791, ratified. But in that entire history, only 61 women that identify as black have ever served, black women in our Congress since 2025, up to 2025. Again, change comes, but change is slow. In the history of our country, we've had only a total of 5 women, black women, that have served in the U.S. Senate, 57 black women that have served in the U.S. Congress, and 3 black women that have served as delegates. Now, some of the first: Shirley Chisholm, Democrat out of New York, was the first black woman to serve in the U.S. Congress, serving in the U.S. House of Representatives from 1969 to 1983. So the first black woman to come into Congress came in 1969. And the first Republican black woman to serve in the U.S. Congress, Mia Love, served in the U.S. House of Representatives from 2015 to 2019. No other black Republican woman has served in Congress since. Current statewide executive offices: 3.2% of all statewide elected executives identify as black women. 10.3% of all women statewide elected executives identify as black. Now, when we talk about what are statewide elections are those individuals, executive level, governor, also lieutenant governor, and the like. So it depends on the actual state. Here in our Commonwealth, executive level are the governor, lieutenant governor, which we do have one black woman serving, the first, Winsome Sears, lieutenant governor here in the Commonwealth of Virginia, and then also the attorney general. So those are our statewide executive level officers here in the Commonwealth. But across the country, only 3.2% of all statewide elective executives identify as black women. And 10.3% of all women statewide elective executives identified as black. Now, here's something that could change here in the Commonwealth of Virginia this year, the first state to do it. Do you know that there have been 0 black women that are ever served as governor of any state in the United States of America in the history of the country? I'll say that again. There have been zero black women that have ever served as governor in the United States of America. That's remarkable. Not one black woman citizens of states have never elected a black woman as governor. Now, here in the Commonwealth of Virginia, we have Winsome Earl Sears, who is a candidate for the Republican nomination for governor here in the Commonwealth of Virginia. If she receives a nomination, she stands the opportunity to be elected as governor. She beats the Democratic nominee, whomever that may be, at this particular time. So right now, Abigail Spanberger, white female, currently is the front runner to receive that nomination in the Democratic Party. So here in the Commonwealth of Virginia, we could have a woman for the first time as governor. And if the lieutenant governor receives a nomination and wins, she becomes the first black woman to serve as governor. And, of course, the first black Republican woman, and also the first woman of immigrant descent, who she is also Jamaican. So it could be a lot of firsts there. It could be a lot of firsts depending on what happens in November. But we'll talk about that later in another series here on Stay the Water. Now, also, some other firsts, notable firsts, is that Vale Phillips, Democrat out of Wisconsin, was the first black woman to serve in a statewide elective executive office, serving as Wisconsin's Secretary of State from 1979 to 1983. And then also Vicki Buckley, Republican out of Colorado, was the first Republican black woman to serve at a statewide elective executive office, serving as Colorado's Secretary of State from 1985 to 1999. Now, think about it. Think about this. 1979 was the first time any state, and this was Wisconsin, elected a black woman statewide, Secretary of State. That's 10 years after Shirley Chisholm, which was the first black woman to ever serve in the U.S. Congress in the history of our country. So we went from 1920, women's suffrage, to 1969, and then to 1979. That's how long it took. And still, till 2025, we have no black women that have ever served as governor. Change comes, but change is slow. It's Stay the Water. I'm your host, Eric LaVille, and we're starting our new series here on Women's History Month, and that is our celebration and shows about women in politics and policy. Today, we're looking at the Virginia delegation as it relates to women in black women in politics. And what we've been doing, we've been breaking down the numbers in the first half of the show of black women serving in office across the country as it relates to notable offices, both on the federal level and also on the state level. We left off just shortly with our executive offices, and no black woman has ever served as governor as the top executive office in the history of the country. But on a state level, we have currently on the state level 386 members of all houses of the legislature in the United States, state level, 50 states, serving as legislators. 386. That's 92 state senators. We have black women serving as state senators. 294 serving as either the equivalent of a delegate or House of Representative. Now, keep in mind that 5.2% of all state legislators identify as black women. 15.9% of all women state legislators identify as black. With this, we have some firsts. In 1928, Mimi Buckingham Harper, Republican out of West Virginia, was the first black woman to serve in the state legislative office, appointed to West Virginia House of Delegates in 1928 to fill the vacancy left by her husband who passed away. But she did not seek election, so she was appointed. However, Crystal Foss, Democrat out of Pennsylvania, was the first black woman elected to serve in a state legislative office, serving in Pennsylvania's House of Representatives from 1939 to 1940. And Karen Bass, Democrat out of California, was the first black woman to lead either chamber or state legislature, serving as California's Speaker of the House in 2008 to 2010. So again, change happens, but change is slow. And currently we have of major cities, of top 100 most populous cities, we have 7 black women that serve as mayor currently. 7% of all mayors in the top 100 offices identify as black, 7 total. And 21.2% of all women mayors in top 100 most populous cities identify as black. Not just as we take a look at this. 24 in the history of our nation, 24 women have been black women that are served in the top 100 most populous cities as a mayor. Now, I mentioned earlier that this is our Virginia delegation show, and we just looked at the statistics of women serving in the legislature. But here in the Commonwealth of Virginia, it wasn't until one woman that had the courage to run for office here out of the city of Norfolk. Until that time, it was no black woman that ever served in the state legislature. That first black woman was elected to Virginia's House and Senate, was also an HBCU educated woman. That's none other than our very own Senator Yvonne B. Miller, who is an NSU alum, also was a retired professor, and the first black woman to serve in the House of Delegates here in the Commonwealth of Virginia history, and also the first black woman to serve in the Senate here in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Think about that. The first black woman ever to serve in the House and the Senate was a Spartan. Come on. It doesn't get any better than that. And that took place. Senator Yvonne Miller, we call her senator now. She has passed away. And we named an internship after her that's funded by the state. And we'll talk about that a little bit later at the end, but we also will have a special show identifying that particular internship and our inaugural interns for it. But Yvonne Miller broke the racial and gender barriers, being this first black woman to win a seat in an election in the House of Delegates in 1983. 4 years later, she became the first senator. She became Senator Miller, first black woman elected to a seat in the state Senate, and served on the Budget Writing Finance Committee. Now, that's key. She served on the committee. She was the first black woman to chair a Senate committee, the Senate Transportation Committee. Now, in 2010, Senator Miller and Senator Louise Lucas succeeded in having Virginia recognize the Nottoway as among the state's remaining Native American tribes. Now, sadly, we lost her the day before her 78th birthday in 2012 to stomach cancer. But also, not just was she an HBCU graduate, not only was she the first black woman to be a House of Delegate and also serving the House of Delegate and also serving the Senate, but she also was a member of Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated. With that, she was also, as I mentioned earlier, an educator. She was a graduate of Norfolk State University, where she received her bachelor's, and then also she completed her, in 1956, she also completed another degree, but she did her master's from the Teachers College of Columbia and earned her PhD in education from University of Pittsburgh. So not only was she the first of many things, she was the eldest of 13 children as well, out of North Carolina, born in 1934, but she was also a retired educator, professor, and head of the Department of Childhood Early Education. In 1999, she retired from Norfolk State, having taught here for 31 years. Again, a tremendous figure in our politics here in the Commonwealth of Virginia, here in the city of Norfolk, and also across the country as well. Again, we're going to dedicate more time to her with the scholarship we have named in her name. But I want to point out something else, that the political landscape is transforming, and black women are transforming this landscape. This is from Word in Black. It basically talks about how, during this last election series, we've had victories that we haven't had before. State Senator Jennifer McClellan became the first black woman to represent the Commonwealth of Virginia in Congress. Think about that. The first black woman to be a U.S. Congresswoman. 2023, right? 2023. And then, of course, Charlene Herron became the first black woman to serve as a Virginia House Majority Leader. And of course, just across the board, we have the highest number of black women ever serving in the state legislature, as evidenced by our Virginia Legislative Black Caucus being the largest it's ever been. But I want to go back just a moment before I honor all of the black women, all of our women, the black women that are serving in the General Assembly. I want to talk a little bit about just how things happen. And I don't think things just happen. Let me take that back. How God has lined things up. We have Senator Yvonne Miller, who served on the Budget Writing Finance Committee. And we have an NSU alum. And we have an NSU alum, Senator Louise Lucas, who now is the chair of that committee. So when you take a look at how, and it wasn't until 1983, and then, of course, 4 years later, 1987, until we had a black woman in the Senate. Friend, again, change is slow, but change happens. And when God allows change to happen, He allows it to happen in a way that only He can do. So we have arguably the most influential and legendary and trailblazing woman serving in the Senate, black woman from NSU, and currently definitely the highest ranking ever in the Senate to serve, is also an NSU graduate. Behold the green and gold. Again, when God allows change to happen, He allows it to happen the only way that He can do it. Now, according to, I mentioned that our Virginia Legislative Black Caucus and black women have blazed trails in this, the largest it's ever been. And when change happens, it's slow, but it happens, but a floodgate comes after that. Currently, according to the Virginia Legislative Black Caucus website, their members currently make up 32 in the General Assembly. And of course, we know that the Virginia Legislative Black Caucus is committed to improving the economic, educational, political, and social conditions of African Americans and underrepresented groups in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Currently, of the women that are serving, we have, and I'm looking at districts, so we're going by district numbers that they serve. In the House of Delegates, District 20, we have Michelle Maldonado serving as a delegate. District 25, we have Brianna Sewell serving as a delegate. In District 2, we have Adele McClure also serving as a delegate, who used to be the executive director for the Virginia Legislative Black Caucus. We have Katrina Carlson in District 54. We have Karen Keys Gamara, District 1, serving as delegate. We have Deborah Gardner, District 76, serving as delegate. We have Ray Cousins, District 79, serving as delegate. We have Jennifer Carroll Foy, District 33 in the Senate, serving as state senator. We have Destiny LaVore Boland, serving as a delegate in District 80. And we have our very own Delegate Bonita Anthony, who represents Norfolk State University in the House of Delegates, serving in District 92 in the House of Delegates. We have LaSharice Aird, state senator, serving in the Senate District 13. We have Charlene Herron, serving as delegate in District 4. We have my senator, Senator Mamie Locke, serving in District 23 in the Senate, and also serving in leadership in the Senate as well. We have Senator Louise Lucas, serving in District 18 in the Senate. We have Dolores McQuinn, serving in the House of Delegates in District 81, and that's the city of Richmond. We also have another NSU alum, Delegate Candy King, serving as delegate in District 23. We have Delegate Marcia Price, serving as delegate in District 85. And we also have Delegate Jeanne Ward, serving as delegate in District 87. And then our senator for Norfolk State University, we have Senator Angela Williams-Graves, serving as senator in the Senate in District 21. We also have Delegate Jackie Glass, serving as delegate in District 93. And these make up our delegation of black women serving in the General Assembly, the largest amount of black women ever serving in the General Assembly. And of that, the most influential in the Senate is none other than a Spartan. Again, when we talk about history is not only made, but it's also living. And the women that I just named are living history. You know, politics is a dirty game. It's very complicated, but it's also a profession of relationships. And in order to be successful in politics, you got to build relationships across the board, but not only just relationships across the board, but in your community with the people you represent. And when we talk about representing the interests of African Americans and people in certain communities that have challenges in life, maybe at a certain economic level, maybe some complicated situation, whatever the case may be. But when you have that type of constituency, it's incumbent upon the legislators to make sure they know who they serve and know the interests that they have. These women I just named, I can guarantee you, because I'm there, they are serving the interests of their community. And that is something definitely to behold. As we continue to look at Virginia and its transforming landscape and politics, Virginia right now is going through a transformation, remarkable political transformation, a political achievement of black women. They've made significant strides in ballots up and down the ballot, across the Commonwealth. These victories, according to Word in Black, they are not just numerical wins, but they symbolize a deeper engagement, empowerment in our democracy. And we're only as strong as every person that votes. Make sure that you stay engaged. Make sure you understand the issues, because right now, if there's ever a time in history, we need leaders that are fearless, courageous, that are bold, but also have the community and the people in which they serve at their heart. That time is now. As always, we want to thank you for joining us at this half hour as we come to you every Sunday from WNSB Hot 91, the campus of the Norfolk State University, to bring you movers, shakers, and policymakers to you as we discuss issues important to the community. Join us next week and all this month as we honor women in politics and policy here on this Women's History Month. Until next time, be good, be great, God bless, and we'll see you next week.
Hi, I'm Carrie Washington, and you're listening to State of the Water with award-winning host Dr. Eric Claville.